Welcome to the Songwriter Connection podcast. Our show originates in Nashville, Tennessee, Music City, USA. We connect you to the songwriters and the stories behind your favorite songs. Join us as we take a look at the craft of songwriting through the eyes of the songwriter. Now, here's your host, Dave Linehan.
Hi, I'm Dave, and I live in Nashville, Tennessee, where it seems at times I'm surrounded by songwriters. And you know what? I don't mind at all. In fact, that's part of the reason why I'm here in Nashville. I love music. I love to write songs. And I just love to immerse myself into the culture and the creativity and get to know these great songwriters. And the purpose of this podcast is to do just that. We're going to introduce you to the songwriters and the songs. Each writer has an incredible story to share. And I'm going to bring those stories to you throughout this podcast. Now, I was wondering the other day, why so many songwriters in Nashville? There are more songwriters around here in town per capita than any place in the world. And probably the most obvious reason is it is Music City, right? But is there more than that? Writers and people in the music industry tell me that there's a draw and a lure that cannot be denied. I know before I moved here, I felt drawn to be here. And a little bit about Nashville. Since 2013, Nashville's economy has been ranked as one of the fastest growing in the country. But is music the biggest industry? Well, no, that would be healthcare. And then there's education and tourism. But, you know, music is still a big part of it. The music industry has $9.65 billion with a B annual economic impact on the Nashville region. And there are 4.19 times as many music industry jobs in Nashville than there are anywhere in the country. So it makes you wonder, do you have to be here to make a career in songwriting or the music industry happen? Well, there's a hit writer named Carrie Kurt Phillips who once said you can put a bucket out in the middle of a field, but you're never going to get a cow to back up over it. So, yeah, I guess it helps to be here in town. Our guest today has been in town for about 30 years. He is from Birmingham, Alabama originally. I can't believe Ohio boy going to say Roll Tide right now, but I will. Roll Tide. And Roll Tide. He's sitting across from me at the dining room table, my writer's room of sorts. And like on the last podcast, he's going to play some music live for us here around the dining room table. I love when we get a chance to do that. So this is episode 1, season 5, and my guest is Marc-Alan Barnette. Hey, Mark.
Yeah, hello, Dave.
I got to tell you, he's my favorite performer here in Nashville. He can command a room. He's funny. He's entertaining. He calls his style in-your-face country soul, and you're going to soon find out why.
That's great. That was a great intro.
Well, thank you.
It's suited for you.
We got to practice it one time.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, I know. I had to run through this. Yeah, no, but it does bear what we talk about as writers and what the allure is. We're all creating our own niches now, and this is you're very well suited for that. And I think that is the present and the future of the music industry, not just the music industry, all the entertainment industry. I mean, look at how many podcasts are going global. Yeah. Netflix is the big mover and shaker on original content as opposed to Hollywood, you know, and it's just kind of an interesting reinventing of the wheel that we're all involved in.
It is.
You know, and that's the lure as why is Nashville, while people can do it everywhere.
So you felt drawn to this town.
I did. I had been in bands, rock bands back during the late 70s and the 80s in a band called 24 Karat that we were involved in a major battle of the bands, nationwide battle of the bands, people like John Bon Jovi and Twisted Sister in previous years. And our band was, if you can remember the bands Loverboy and Journey, kind of, you know, the lead singer up front in the pants that were too tight, you know, and his
was
voice
that
was me. Yeah, that was absolutely right. And I can also say when the bands will be over is the day after the publicity picture is taken.
I've always happened.
It's always happened. But we achieved some notoriety in the South and nationwide a bit. We got to be on MTV and all that kind of thing. And
nice.
It was very cool. And but you find out once the contests are over, they're over, and which would help me later when I was working with a person that went on to The Voice, you know. And so, well, once they're done, they're done. Just you know, that's a great thing, great resume.
Enjoy it while you're doing it.
Yeah, enjoy it while you're doing it.
Yeah.
And I was in Birmingham. Music changed in the latter part of the 90s. It got into the heavy metal band of the week. It got where everybody was sounding just alike. Here's Rat, here's Poison, here's you know, they're all like that. Yeah. Here's the hair, the hairnet, you know, Aquanet, and then it got darker. And when you get into 87, 88, and you have Nirvana, and you have just a darker tone, and things got into rap and hip hop, and it was just not me.
Right.
And at the same time, I met a guy named Roy Mueller who lived in Birmingham, who had lived up here for about 10 years and had a couple of hits in the 70s. And he had moved back to Nashville to be with his father-in-law and take care of his father-in-law. Actually, you ever heard of a guy named Harry the Hat Walker?
No.
Okay, he was St. Louis baseball player. It was a coach in the baseball, but he had retired, and that was his father-in-law.
Wow.
And so Ron and I got together, and he showed me about the writing of Nashville, the writing style of Nashville.
And it's a different style.
It's a different style.
We'll talk about that.
And I just was so blown away by his talent and being able to just kind of say things in a way I'd never even thought of. Mm-hmm. And then I made a couple of trips up here and saw people play, and I saw people at the Bluebird, and so what they could do with an acoustic guitar and a vocal. Not a band. These guys were just hitting you in the face, and I said, "This is where I'm coming."
I'm a part of that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so the April Fool's Day, 1988, I moved to Nashville, and that was a Friday. On the Monday, which is the 4th, I showed up at a open mic and played at the very end of the night, 3 people, made the first contact that would lead me to a cut, which a girl named Shelby Lynn cut one of my songs, and I had written it with my father and Ron, and it was my dad's general idea, and it got used in a Willie Nelson, Chris Christopherson television movie called Another Pair of Aces.
Wow.
The song was called That's Where It Hurts, and Willie two-steps to the song.
Wow.
And my dad was the biggest Willie fan in the world, so he got to see Willie two-step to the song.
Oh,
the only song he ever wrote in his life, and it got our names in People magazine, and he would always say, "I don't know what's so hard about writing songs." And that was basically, my
It's
beginning.
easy, right?
That's it,
Yeah.
that's it, yeah.
Wow.
And,
cool story.
Yeah.
Yep.
But then you find out that there are so many things in a career that are out of your hands. You know, I had in with this blue-eyed country soul kind of thing, and there were people like Delbert McClinton, and there was T. Graham Brown, and then, there was Leroy Parnell, and then I was playing out and had a band at this time, and a guy came up and said, "Man, I love everything about you." I was just in, I love your music, I love your look, I love everything. So I was just in Marietta, Georgia 3 weeks ago, and I signed a guy just like you. His name's Travis Tritt.
Oh, my.
And so you find out that all of these things, and I still had a lot of people coming in. This is what will happen. You have a lot of things. You're juggling 10 things. One thing will work and everything else falls apart. And this guy named Garth Brooks came in and just exploded. And all of the blue-eyed soul guys just got shoved. The landscape of music changes.
Wow. And just like that.
Just like that.
Yeah.
And so I had to, you have to learn to deal with that. And after a while, you go through that. And I had a duo. I was working with this guy, and I get a meeting with the record company president. He says, "Man, I like everything. I like everything about you. I like the music, like your look. You're doing this duet thing. There's a couple of guys right ahead of you that just got in about 3 months ago. That's Montgomery Gentry."
Oh, God.
And so, this is like a day late and a dollar short every time. But I was fortunate enough that I had writing deals. I had people come to me. I had hit writers that invited me. I've written with over 50 writers, had top 10 or number 1 songs, Grammy Award winners, and
you've had songs cut by a lot of different people, John Barry and David Ball and Shelby Lynn, like you say, and Frankie Ballard, and
Last year I got a cut on the Ides of March.
Ides of March.
I'm the friendless stranger in the black sedan.
Oh, the vehicle song.
Yes. Jim Peterick, who wrote "Hold On Loosely" and "Eye of the Tiger."
Oh my,
He's the leader of that band.
Wow.
And he and I and a woman named Joey Scott had written a song called "Blue Storm Rising" for an artist he was producing. 2 artists he was producing. Those artists broke up, and he ended up doing it on the Ides of March 55th anniversary.
Wow!
And he sings it with it's a duet called "Blue Storm Rising," and he sings it with the current lead singer of Jefferson Starship.
Wow.
Kathy Richardson. So
I'll be darned.
It's just an odd business.
You never know.
You
just
weird.
never know when you're in the game.
That's right.
Well, let's hear a song from you, man.
Sure.
You got your guitar, and before we get, I know you're so great to talk to, and so many fascinating stories. But let's hear what this "In Your Face Country Soul" is all about.
My music is always inspired by Motown. Ray Charles is my favorite singer in the world. I love that era, Stax, Memphis, R&B kind of thing. And so with the stories that country country do. Country's a very clear, plain-spoken language. And I had always been, well, how do you say, we get so many people are writing depressing, and that drives me crazy. So I wanted to write a song, first of all, that would just be a little over 2 minutes long, and that would have how do you say I miss you without exactly saying I miss you? And that was the point of this song. It's been a little while since we were you and I still see our friends that thought we were the perfect fit. They ask just what I'm finding. Is it still you I miss? If they think I need to be reminded, I just tell them this. Every day when the sun comes up and every night when it goes back down, every time that I take a breath, every time I let it out, anytime that I'm in a crowd or all alone with a thought or two, anytime there's a sight or sound, that's the time I think of you. Think a year would be enough to have those memories fade. No matter how I try, I can't find no escape. I threw out every picture, every email, note, and card. No matter how much distance, turn around, there you are. Every day when the sun comes up and every night when it goes back down, every time that I take a breath, every time I let it out, anytime that I'm in a crowd or all alone with a thought or two, anytime there's a sight or sound, that's the time I think of you. I bet I never even cross your mind. No matter how I try, I bet I'm going to find that every day when the sun comes up and every night when it goes back down, every time that I take a breath, every time I let it out, anytime that I'm in a crowd or all alone with a thought or two, anytime that I take a sound, that's the time I think of you. Think of you. Ooh.
Oh, that's awesome. Marc-Alan Barnette is our guest on the Songwriter Connection podcast. If you are not from Nashville and you're coming into town to visit, you want to take in a songwriter round somewhere. If you get into the Bluebird, it's hard to do that, and I think they're closed during the COVID right now anyway, but there's other places like the Commodore and the local. Look for this guy, Marc-Alan Barnette. You will just absolutely love his performances. Mark, thanks for joining us. And there's another thing that I wanted to talk to you about, because you help a lot of up-and-coming songwriters, and we refer to you sometimes as Yoda because
right, you will. Yeah,
you teach us a lot, and I know a big impact on what brought me here in my songwriting, and you helped me learn to perform a lot better. I was always used to performing behind a mic with nobody watching me. So I had to learn that. So you provide a very valuable service to folks. So let's talk a little bit more about what you do there.
Well, another thing, I never expected to do it. I just had this ability to show people some ways to do things. I never had problems getting attention. I was always big, bold, and focused. So you get people, songwriters will a lot of times, unless they're focusing on artists, they just completely, they lose everything. A great writer will write an amateur writer will write what they want to say. A great professional writer will write what an audience wants to hear, and a great writer will do both. And so I started working with people just kind of as an accident. It was due to the NSAI, Nashville Songwriters Association International groups, like your group in Cincinnati. And I would come up and I would show there's basically 4 things in a music career that you always have to think of. It's the creation of the song. The presentation,
all about the song, right?
The presentation of the song, recorded or live, networking, and business. Those are the 4 things. And so creating songs that are interesting, unique, and stand up, and then performing that song or recording that song and making sure it presents very well. Then meeting people, networking. Then the business follows. And your group up there, when you guys were in Cincinnati, and I would come up from time to time, but 2-3 times every few months, and you guys had that good little group of people. You wrote together, you hung out together, you became very good friends.
Yes, we did.
And then you had things like that little Taste of Claremont thing that was so cool. And
all those pro writers used to come up. It was great.
Well, and then you lead to even the bigger thing, which was the Taste of Claremont Festival. And all the writers from here wanted to come up, which provided you guys. You mentioned Carrie Kurt Phillips, which is great. I remember all that Dave Gibson and all the guys that would come up and
Win
Win Varbo. Oh, God, Win Varbo.
We got to get him on this show.
But it gave all of you an understanding of Nashville, the other side of Nashville, so that when you came down and kind of began to experience it, you already had people that you knew in town.
Yeah, and that was very helpful.
And that's part of what the deal is. And so my thing with there's two different things. There's artist-writers and there's writer-artists. And the artist-writers are usually younger, and they're out there all full of vinegar, ready to go charging against the world. But a lot of times they're all over the place, So you got to kind of focus them down and find the center. And when you're working with somebody who is, as a girl I just recently worked with from Indiana, a girl named Brianna Faith, and they have songs, but they sound just like songs that are already on the radio. So you're trying to find that connection. Who are they?
Yeah.
And when you're
find
18,
your own voice, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
When you're 18 or 19 years old and you're just writing stuff that you already hear, it just comes out like everything else. And the girls all come here and they've got what I call ACSS, Angry Chick Singer Syndrome. And you'll hear them, and they get up and everything's about how terrible the guys are.
Yeah.
Guys will be doing DDSS, Depressed Dude Singer Syndrome. And then there's Bro Country. And
it's Bro Country. Yeah.
And so if you're working with somebody and you see a group of writers, 25, 30 writers on a night, and they're doing between 1 and 3 songs each. And so now you got, 60, 70, 90 songs, and 80 of those songs are depressing, bitter, angry, upset. Everything is bad. And look, all we got to do is look
and they're
around
all ballads,
us.
right?
They're all ballads. We look around ourselves. Do we really need any more negativity piled on what we're all going through? So I look at that with the artist and say, you got to find ways to stand up. And it starts with the songs that you write. It begins with the song.
It does.
Then you get with older writers. I recently had a guy from Wisconsin come down, guy named Mark Monroe, and he is kind of an older folky kind of guy, and in order to kind of move to the next levels, you've got to tie in with people. That's the networking aspect.
Oh, yeah.
You want to meet younger writers, you want to younger artists, and so you want to pair those things up. And so the beauty is when you're writing with somebody and you get that age of experience with some younger person, and we're trying to do two things as songwriters. The first is write a song that people hear and they go, oh my God, that's my life. The other one that is harder is, oh my God, that's my life, but I never even thought of it that way.
Wow.
And that's kind of how it comes together. And when you can find ways to make these people look at music a little bit differently, and they go, oh, that's the deal, and that's what my thing is. And where it pays off, you have a song like Maren Morris, My Church. There's never been a person alive that hadn't had a terrible day, get into their car, turn the radio or stereo up, and just ride and sing at the top of their lungs. And that's like a religious experience. Right. And that's how it all comes together. And what we're having to do now, as songwriters and artists and however we're doing, people have an 8-second attention span, and so it's even more incumbent on us to find some things that say the same thing, but say it in a different way. And that's the difficulty. And so that's what I do. And people that come to Nashville that just have a little time to spend here, I try to help them shape and maximize their time.
And you do it with these tours, too.
Yes, that's the tour, yeah.
Tell me about the tour.
The tour is through the past, the present, and the future of the writer. And these two people I just worked with. They'll come in, all writers will have songs. Publishers don't see them anymore. There's no way to get in the front doors because there's literally, at any one time, there's about 250,000 people trying to do music in this town. All right. There's about 4,000 actual jobs, and then there's even less when it comes to
songwriter jobs.
Well, that's music related jobs,
okay.
and particularly in the songwriter focus. And you come in and go all the time, and so the industry kind of reinvents itself. So people that come in, they just want to play on a writer's. They just want to get somebody to hear what they do. Well, before you do that, make sure you're not doing the same thing everybody else is already doing. So I look at their songs and I do line by line, note by note. You've been through this before, and try to give them, if they come in with 6, 7, 8 songs, what are the best 3 that they're going to play on a writer's night? And why? And I break it down line by line, note by note. And that's the past. Then they'll tell me about things that they're doing in their home area. They'll all have things, and so we'll talk about the present. How do I build something? How do I show them how to build a little bit more fan thing? How do I show them how to be a little bit more conscious on video? How do those things that work out? And then with the younger artists, you have momingers and dadingers, and they're the ones spending money left and right.
Oh yeah.
How do you slow things down and be effective? Your bang for your buck. How do you do something that's going to get them into the next door and the next door? And so all of these things I do, and then I write songs with them.
Oh, that's great.
And I'll show them the processes. The professional writers, the hit writers, will look at subjects in a way that most people just didn't think of.
Right.
You look at the big phenomenon over the years is Taylor Swift.
Right.
And you say what you want about Taylor. I remember meeting her when she was 14. I met her with her mother, and I thought, okay, here's another cute blonde girl, And then my daughter wanted her CD, for Christmas, that first one, And I bought it. I don't buy CDs, particularly from girls. And I was listening to it, and I was going, wow, this stuff is pretty good. And she did. There was one song that I always talk about Taylor. She had the song Our Song. And we've heard that phrase a million times. Our song. We were dancing at our wedding. Our song, our child was born. She did it with noises, talking low on the phone so your mama don't know, slamming door, all of those things. And
what a writer she became. She learned to write, didn't she?
She exactly was. And I just, that's the kind of things that you try and pass on. How can you look at these things differently?
Yeah.
And it's a thing that comes with experience. I didn't know it till I started writing with hit writers. And when you're in a room and you're trying to focus on something, somebody else is just on fire, and they just keep coming up with stuff. One of my principal mentors, and Ron Muir was like that, but Jimbo Henson.
Yeah.
And Jimbo just come up with the lines, and you just go.
Jimbo wrote Fancy Free for Oak Ridge
I'm
Boys.
Looking for a Party Crowd.
Yeah.
Just an amazing guy.
Yep.
And they just come up with lines and you just shake your head.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing that I've been lucky with, that I'm really fast when I write with people.
You are.
I can
That'd be a great podcast sometime. Maybe get you in here and dig into the process and watch you write a song. That would be really cool. Yeah. See how that works. Yeah.
And so you just bring all these things to bear. You're almost like a method actor. Mm-hmm. If you study people like Jack Nicholson, I compare acting and songwriting a lot. There's a lot of similar things. You come in and find a role and find that little sweet spot, and then they can deliver it, and they'll do multiple takes. It'll be a little different each time. It's like the layers of a character.
That's great.
And so I try to bring that same thing into songwriting.
Very, very cool. Now, if people want to find out more about it, where can they get information on your tours and the services you provide?
Marc-Alan.com, www.marcalnette.com.
Yeah. Good.
Another thing they can, you don't choose music. Music chooses you. They can do that phrase, and that's music chooses you.
That is that comes from a great song that you wrote that I know that you're going to do a little bit later on. Let's, you used to tell this story, and I think this really kind of sums up what you were talking about, and maybe I can get you to do this.
Sure.
About the first time you auditioned to play the Bluebird. And go ahead and tell that story, because it's...
You want me to do it? Or
and I want you to do it. And tell the story, too, because it's fascinating. Well, and it nails what you've been talking about.
Right. It was originally written by Ron Muir, and I heard it, and the very thing that he was talking about had happened to me. And so I got to go. When he and I started working together, we basically changed a little thing, and he gave me credit, but it was his thing. But again... That's my life. I've never heard it that way before, In Nashville, you get everybody with their Nashville songs, their music songs. I mean, well, all right, how am I going to find a different way to say this? And he had done that, and then he fortunately kind of let me in to actually talk about some of the things that had happened to me, And you get into these situations, and I was at the Bluebird audition, and there were 85 writers. And everybody getting up and doing one song, and every one of them were kind of
the ballads and the
I'm gonna die, take you with me. Yeah, every one of them were like that, you know. So this is what I did. It's called the grand opening. Was my first night for playing in a bar room. And I hoped I'd do the songs they'd love to hear. But before I started picking, went into that room where little boys go when they've been drinking beer. Then I came back out and stepped into the spotlight. Picked up my guitar and tried to sing. When I looked at all the people, they were staring back at me. None of them was saying anything. Well, the first tune that I did was Fast and Light. But no one moved except the man at table 3. I saw him writing down some words upon his napkin. Waitress giggled as she handed it to me. It said, do you know your fly is standing open? Do you know your zipper is undone? She might have guessed those were my first 2 requests. Now, I'd never even heard of either one. So I read them to the crowd. They applauded long and loud. I broke out in a sweat of desperation. And I don't know why or how, but I got up to take a bow. And they gave me my first standing ovation. I said, thank you very much, friends and neighbors. I wish my mother was here tonight to see this. Then I sat back down and tried to play some music. But the waitress brought another note to me. Though her face was turning red, she just snickered and said it's from that man at table number 3. I said, well, let's open it up and see. It said, don't you know your horse ain't in the stable? Don't you know your barn door ain't been closed? Couldn't help but wonder where he'd heard these crazy songs. Some old drunk cowboy, I suppose. Then I glanced down at the bottom of his napkin, and I started feeling better right away. Because after all those songs of horses, flies, and stables, here was one that finally I could play. Said this man must be a fan of the Beatles, and this song he's underlined I'd like to do. And they went into a rage as I stood upon the stage singing, P.S. I love you.
That's brilliant. I love it every time I hear it.
I was getting notes from our stage manager, and I said, "Do you know your plants? Do you know your fly standing open?" And I'm going, "I don't know that song. I don't know. I thought it was some weird David Allen Coe song. I don't know that one." But that's exactly
it happened. It happened just like that.
Yeah, and that was the truth.
So that was the audition, and they had to have you right away. I'm sure. I mean, you passed the audition.
There was a guy named David Wilcox who would go on to be very successful, and me that passed out of 85 people. We were the only 2 that passed the audition.
Wow,
that's fantastic. And Amy Curlin became a very, very good friend of mine, and she gave me this real interesting piece.
Amy was the one that started.
Amy was the one that started, and still the backbone behind the. But actually, she's the one that really focused Nashville songwriting. It had been around before, but the Bluebird became what the Grand Ole Opry is to the country music. The Bluebird became to represent. You can go to France and mention Bluebird, right, and immediately it's acoustic music, and so it's just.
And there's a great movie, by the way. I think it's on Netflix. That if you haven't had a chance to watch it about the Bluebird, it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. And she said, "You were pretty good." This is right as I was starting out, and I was starting to get some attention. And she said, "You came from Birmingham, pretty successful there." I said, "Yeah, I had a pretty good run there." She said, "Well, you got some awards and newspaper articles and stuff." Yeah, I said, "I'd done that." She said, "Well, great. Take all that stuff and put it in the corner because you start all over again." And I'm going, and she said, it's a 10-year town. And I'm going, 10-year town? I already had a cut. It was 10 years before I got the second one.
Oh my.
And so it takes Even if you're, and I hit the ground running, man. I mean, I had a lot of things happening, and it still takes a long time.
It takes time, doesn't it?
It's not only your abilities, it's the people that you know. Because what happens in Nashville, and I know you,
or as they say, that people who know you, right?
Well, that's a Carrie Kirk Phillips. It's not who you know; it's who knows you and how they know you. Yeah. And so your political contacts grow. You know, out of the people that move here, there's another, Amy told me this, the people that move here, 85% will be gone within 6 months.
Yeah, crazy.
And so
even Garth. When he first came,
went home and then came back.
Yeah,
and so what happens is most people just dissipate off. The people that are continue to be there after a couple of years, they find other things that they have to have a living, and they have to put themselves into some other situations. And then you'll find people who originally, you're talking about the lure. You know, there are people that come to be artists and come to be songwriters, and then that doesn't work out. And then they'll branch off into other things, and some will become publishers. Some will become ASCAP or BMI. Some will become, will go to work at other things that don't necessarily have to do with music, but will keep a hand in music.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it'll take a while to come back around, but usually people will find their own little niche.
So let me ask you, it's like going into the major leagues, of course.
Right. That's
but
exactly.
There is something different about, we touched on this earlier, there is something different about writing for the Nashville market.
Right.
Nashville song is different, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Most other music, other forms of music are... The music is usually written first. It starts with beats or grooves, and start with and in today's a lot of electronic stuff, and the movement is determined by the movement of the music, you know, and that could be dance, electronic media, it could be all of that. And lyrics come almost as an afterthought.
Right.
Here, it's a very story-driven format. And even if you find R&B songs, even if you find rap or hip hop or other types of things, the lyric and the story is what separates it from everything else. In country music, it is always trying to be relatable, so people will get it. Conversational, so it sounds like two people talking, and then a reinforcing melodic hook, those singable melodic hooks that are very distinct. The chorus.
A lot of times it's that melody that draws you in, but the lyrics that blow you away.
Melody gets them there, lyrics keep them there.
Yeah.
And you'll find an interesting thing about Nashville songwriting, and I call them elbow moments. And elbow moments are when you hear a line that just whacks you, and you just want to punch somebody in the ribs. Say, "Did you hear that?" And that,
you've got quite a few of those.
Well, I hope so. I appreciate
you do.
But that's a thing that the Nashville writers, the great writers, do. The Don Schlitz and the Gary Burrs and those people that they'll layer that stuff, and you just hear it, and it makes you want to listen again.
And I don't want people to get the impression that it's all country music.
It's not. No, not at all. Not at all.
It's all genres.
Right.
But there is, I don't care if you're writing for, to sync with a movie
Exactly.
or on TV, there's something different about a Nashville song, no matter what the genre is.
Yes, there's a reason that people like Peter Frampton and Tommy Shaw and Steven Tyler have moved here. Yeah, that's exactly right.
That's right.
It's a different way to frame up what they're doing, and it makes you focus on the lyric, and the lyric is what makes it stand up.
Absolutely. You got a song in that guitar with one of those elbow moments.
I do.
I want to hear more.
Which one?
I'm going to let you choose, man. I love all your stuff. You know that.
All right. I'll do one I like.
Marc-Alan Barnette is our guest. This is the Songwriter Connection podcast. We appreciate you listening.
She turned 21 in 1952, wanted to work the late shift. Cadillac pulled to the curb, the man comes strolling in. Here's the king of country music, pure white suit, jet black trim. Orders up the ham and eggs, she can't believe it's him. She's waiting on Hank, living her life through a moment frozen in time. Holding out hope, the star in her eyes sees more than a small town girl. Catching her breath, checking her hair. Does he even know that she's there? Praying today he'll take her away. She's waiting on Hank. Nobody knows what happened away from prying eyes. A 15-minute break turned into an hour overtime. In her hand she held a napkin, words scribbled out in black, promising to change her life as soon as he got back. She's waiting on Hank, living her life through a moment frozen in time, holding out hope. The star in her eyes sees more than a small town girl, catching her breath, checking her hair. Does he even know that she's there? Praying today to take her away. She's waiting on Hank. She turned 71 in April. Wanda sits alone at this customary table on this bar stool she calls home. She's waiting on Hank, living her life through a moment frozen in time, holding out hope. The star in her eyes sees more than a small town girl, catching her breath, checking her hair. Does he even know that she's there? Praying today to take her away. She's waiting on Hank.
There you go, Marc-Alan Barnette. That is a Nashville song, right?
That is a Nashville song.
It's got a story, and it's got Hank. You know,
well, you know, and the deal on that, and I wrote that with a guy named Brian Hayner. Brian Hayner would go on to be, you know, the prop comic Jeff Dunham.
Yes,
he's Jeff Dunham's guitar guy.
Okay.
That's what he did. But he had this story. He had come to Nashville years before he met me, and he saw this woman talking about this story about meeting Hank back in the early days. Now, the way most people would write a thing, they put his songs in. Hey, good looking, and I'm so lonesome. And they put that, and I didn't want to do that. And so the Nashville way is to show, not tell. She turned 21 in 1952. Wanda works the late shift. You know who she is. You know what year it is. You know everything. Then the Cadillac pulls to the curb. The man comes strolling in. Here's the king of country music.
Perfect.
Pure white suit, jet black trim. Orders up the ham and eggs. She can't believe it's him. She's waiting on Hank. And as you go through the song, she's a waitress. Then they have a little thing. She's waiting on him, and then 71 years later, she's still waiting.
Still waiting.
It was a true story from a woman that a lot of us knew back then. But
great.
She did wait on him, but the rest of the story was just made up. But
there's always a little bit of truth, right?
Absolutely. Never let the facts get in the way of this.
You never do.
But that's the little elbow moments. And
absolutely.
That's what you're trying
you've got quite a few CDs out there that people can listen to, and music that's out there and available at all the basic places. But you have a relatively new one in the last couple of years, which I've been enjoying.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Well, that's the first one that I did. Was that's the time I'm thinking. It's called Life Well Lived, and I wanted to record. I didn't want to be an artist anymore in the thing where you're spending a ton of money and you're trying to. I like doing my little thing. I like having people come to me, but I like enough artistry to present what people, what I want people to hear. And I am kind of one of those old soul Ray Charles guys, and I like that R&B feel. And so I was lucky enough to work with Jay Verne, who is a keyboard player and owns Jay's Play Studio, and we did it. We got some great horn section, and I also have been in a band, Dangerous Dan and the Funk Town Horns. And,
my!
You got a 5-piece horn section. So
great blues voice.
That's the deal, and so that kind of deal is, it's not just a country thing. It can bleed blues and R&B, but the story needs to be there no matter what you're doing.
I need to hear 2 more songs. I want to know. I want to hear the Ray Charles.
Okay.
And this, we talk about in your face country soul here, man. Tell us that story too.
I was riding with a girl named Kimberly, and was not a singer, was not a writer at all. and I'm teaching. These are teaching lessons. And I will always say, if you could write one song for anybody, no matter who it is, living or dead, who would it be? And she couldn't come up with anybody. I said, well, if it was me, it'd be Ray Charles. And she was telling me the story of a guy she had met and fallen in love with. She had this huge crush on. And so he was actually a songwriter. But I just put it all into the context, actually, of a bartender. How we would fall in love at the last of the night. But I thought I'd put it into the way Brother Ray would do it. He had just died at that time. So this is what my tribute, my homage. I had my eyes on you for the past 3 weeks. I tried to talk to you, but I could not speak. So tonight I got my courage up, since liquid encouragement is back in fashion. Lord, you female bartenders must hear every line. This time look deep enough, and you just might find someone you overlooked, someone who just might be red hot passion. It's too soon to say it's a case of love. It's just one thing. I can't get caught up in a crazy little high school crush. Oh no, that's not for us. So when you get off tonight, look here to your right, Lord, I'll be right in this seat, ready to apply some heat to a slow burning fuse. Let both me and you dance red hot passion. Well, it's too soon to say that it's just one thing. I can't get caught up in a crazy little high school crush. No, that's not for us. So when you get off tonight, look into your right, Lord, I'll be right in the seat, Lord have mercy. Ready to apply some heat to a slow burning fuse. Let for me and you that's been on vision. It's a slow burning fuse. Let up for me and you that's red hot vision. You got the right one, girl.
Yes, you did that. Marc-Alan Barnette, that in-your-face country song. You see what we're talking about? That's what we're talking about there.
That's it.
I could hear Ray doing that one too, man.
I was such a Ray fanatic. And my dad reminded me of something. Something happened when I was 3 years old, and I was living in Atlanta with my parents. My parents divorced when I was 7, so I don't remember much about them being together. But I remember going out to this very fancy night. It was called a supper club back then outside of Atlanta, and it was a place called Aunt Fanny's Cabin, which is a converted slave cabin. And even to this day, I think, well, that was politically incorrect.
Yeah.
But we're in, and there was a man playing piano in the middle of the room, and it had like a trio, like a jazz thing. And I had wandered away from the table and went down and stood. And I remember standing by the thing and just kind of looking at this guy. And all of a sudden I felt myself being picked up, and I was put on his lap. And he put his hands over mine and played Sweet Georgia Brown.
Wow.
And I always remembered this thing. I just couldn't remember much else about it. And years later, my dad said, well, you know who that was? I said, no. He said, it was Ray Charles.
Oh, my.
And it was about 1962, and he was playing what was called the Chitlin Circuit, and he was doing a upright bass and a sax player. And
what a memory!
Yeah.
Wow,
yeah,
that is a great story.
So, so I was touched by greatness, and and that was just kind of the things that happen in a career, all these little things, and you don't notice them till years you do something, and you go, oh man, that's where that comes from.
Yeah, that's a part of you.
Yeah, that's a part of it.
I always have to say, they always talk about three chords in the truth. There's about 58 chords in that song.
There's well, actually, there's inversions on the chord. There's some little things.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Flavoring.
So well composed.
Thanks for asking for that.
Absolutely, man. Love it. There's this, you mentioned earlier, you said music chooses you.
Yeah.
A very powerful line, and a lot of truth in that. And you always close out your song with your sets with this special song. And tell us a little bit about that. And why don't you take us out with that one? Marc-Alan Barnette have been our guest on the podcast, and I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have, just watching this pro play. And he's just something else, man. Good to have you here.
It's just a very cool thing, and I'm very proud of what you've done. I remember working with you guys up in Cincinnati, and you were teaching, and you were teaching in radio voiceovers and different things.
Yeah, doing the radio.
And it's really cool that you've applied yourself and found another little section of what you do, as well, to being a very good writer and a very good performer. You've done well, Yoda.
Thank you. Thank you, Yoda.
Well, you've done. I came across that plaque.
I owe a lot to you, brother. I really do. Yeah, I really do.
I was in, again, my career has benefited from other people asking me to do stuff that comes naturally to me. And a couple out in California, Cliff and Bev Nelson, had invited me to their house, and they had a big NSA group. They had about 85.
I remember that group. They were great.
They were very good. And I kept going out there, and I would, because I did the same thing with you guys in Cincinnati, and we do the workshops. You do one on songwriting, one on publishing, one on performance. And you feel like, well, what else can I do? Because the only other thing was to sit down with people and do song critiques, because people want their song. That's fine, but I wonder, what else can I do? So Cliff, who is a teacher, has said, well, in California, we spend about 6 hours a day in traffic if we're trying to go anywhere. We never co-write, and then we go to Nashville. And we don't know anything about we don't know how to co-write, and nobody will even see us in Nashville. There's this wall up, because you got to know people to get inside. So you could come and sit with us, and in a couple of hours give kind of a lesson, kind of like going to get a piano lesson or a guitar lesson, on a songwriting lesson. And we'll call it a write-up, because the term write-up is that. And so that again, and it would be 2-hour sessions, and I would write sometimes multiple songs in them, and sometimes just one or two, and people of all kinds. There would be young artists, and there would be housewives, and there would be all kinds of things. One of the guys, Stephen J. Fisher, attorney at law, I always have to say that, had but he's a pretty good writer, and he had some really good stuff. And I'm wondering, a lot of times you're going, why are you paying me for this? And his thing was, he had known Jeffrey Steele back in the early days, and Jeffrey had moved on to Nashville, become a very successful writer,
big songwriter.
And Stephen stayed in Los Angeles, and he got into the law, and it's fine, but there was always that lure. It was always, God, I woulda, shoulda, coulda. Now he had a family on there. We're in Malibu, California. We're a very nice place. And he was just kind of talking about the wistful, what about Nashville? What about songwriting? And I was going, well, songs about songs are just kind of, everybody do them, and it's not always like that. It's a lot of really tough times, But I wanted to write something that could have the spirit of songwriting. And songwriting is part of it, but it's really more about getting back up after you get knocked down. And an interesting thing about this song is that I've had teachers, I've had truck drivers, I've had salesmen come up and say, that's exactly the way I feel. Because the hook line is, you don't choose music, music chooses you. But I've had people, you don't choose teaching, teaching chooses you.
My wife would say that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did this, and it's been the one that one of the most requested songs that I have. And on Marc-Alan.com and YouTube, I have video on this and several other songs.
Video you shot in 98 degrees.
That's exactly right. Dressed in all black at 98 degrees. You want attention? Yeah, you can have it.
There you go.
But this is kind of the way I feel about songwriting. Another night has ended. Crowd is shuffled out. Two guys at the end of the bar throw their last bud down. The smoky haze is lifted. Work lights have come on. Now I'm packing up this old guitar and headed home alone. I do what I do for the love of it. Sure ain't for the bucks. Maybe some magical wondering if I look deep enough. What they see 3 hours a night is a tortured soul laid bare. Sometimes it feels like I'm playing for tables and chairs. She used to come here with me and hang on every line. Since they were all about her, I had a reason to write. But she couldn't take the lifestyle of this gypsy on the move. You don't choose music, music chooses you. I do what I do for the love of it. Sure ain't for the bucks. Maybe some magical wondering if I look deep enough. What they see 3 hours a night is a tortured soul laid bare. Sometimes it feels like I'm playing for tables and chairs. Yeah, we do what we do for the love of it. It sure ain't for the bucks. But maybe some magical wondering if we all look deep enough. What they say 3 hours a night, or tortured souls laid bare. Sometimes it feels like I'm playing for tables and chairs. Sometimes it feels like I'm playing for tables and chairs. Tables and chairs.
Marc-Alan Barnette, what a great song, Mark. Yeah. I've been there playing for those tables and chairs.
Exactly. It's part of the deal. It's part of the paying dues.
Yeah.
But you've got to play just like there was a room.
Yes, you do.
And the first cut that I got, 3 people left in the bar.
Wow.
One guy throwing darts at the back of the bar walked up and said, "Man, I really like some of your funny stuff." The grand opening, the Zipper song.
Yeah.
And he said, "You got a tape?" At that time it was a tape. So I handed him one. I didn't have my phone number on the tape because I had done it before I moved to Nashville. But I gave it to him. And 6 months later, I saw him out and says, "They're trying to find you at Tree Publishing." Because my roommate works at Tree Publishing. I played it for him. And he played it for somebody who played it for somebody who played it for somebody. And that's how random the business can be.
And that was cut by Tom Breshworth?
No, that song, Tables and Chairs.
Oh, no, the other one.
This is the first one. The first one that I did, That's Where It Hurts, which was cut by Shelby
Oh,
Litt.
okay. That was the song.
The grand opening was cut by Tom Bresh. Okay. And so that's been... it's been done by a lot of stuff. I've had quite a few cuts. None of those big singles, that's what you got to have. But I'll take it.
Yeah,
I'll take it.
Oh, that's cool.
Last year with the Odds of March thing, and Sean Murphy, who is a tremendous R&B singer, was Bob Seger's backup singer for 40 years.
Wow.
And last year she was voted International Blues Artist of the Year. And
fantastic.
She did Can't Blame Nobody But Me. And,
love that song
so
too. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sitting around our table, our dining room table, and playing some of your great music. Marc-Alan Barnette has been our guest, man. Good to have you. Good to see you again.
Thank you.
Next time on the podcast, we'll meet pro writer Jane Bach, who's Google.
She's a wonderful.
Google her. She's written some big songs. So I hope you'll join us then. And thank you again, Marc-Alan Barnette, the Songwriter Connection podcast.
Thank you all.
Thank you for listening to the Songwriter Connection podcast. Find us on social media at Songwriter Connection. Also, listen to Dave Linehan's Nashville Connection radio show. It streams live every Friday morning on WOBL and WNOI. Look for us on Facebook and YouTube. See you next time on Songwriter Connection.